Hey, brother.
Hey Al.
Welcome everyone back to another episode of Siblings in Crime. It's a little different this week. I am stuck in California
I didn't
voluntarily.
say your name.
Oh, I didn't even introduce us?
No.
Skipped right to it. I'm Allie Rossell,
And I'm Blake Murphy.
and just as it sounds, we are siblings who love true crime. You're right. I went out of order this
Yeah,
time.
love it.
Yes, we love it. And so that's why we're not missing this week, even though we are in separate states. So Blake is back home in the studio while I'm in California. I'm on family vacation right now with my in-laws. So if you hear some yelling and screaming, there's a lot of kids, and that's just how it goes, and it's fun.
Yeah. And the audio quality might not be great since we're going over Zoom, but at least
We got something.
we're getting it out.
Yeah. So it's all about that consistency that we're going for.
Yep.
And this week we have a crazy story. This was actually a request to us from Hannah Morgan, which she's awesome. And she's like a big time true crime girl. So I trust her. When I went down this case, I was like, oh my gosh, this one is going to have a content warning. This episode contains discussions of sexual violence, imprisonment, abuse, all the horrible things. And this is our first time with a minor. And so we're going to tread gently because it's gut wrenching. So listener discretion advised, of course, but also if you're listening to true crime, probably something that you are familiar with. But before we go into it, don't forget, we would love it if everyone could please like, rate, subscribe. We're going to have it up in the show notes and on the screen as well. We are Siblings in Crime Pod everywhere.
hmm Yes, we are.
Sure are. So before we get into it, Blake, how was your week?
My week was good. I We are trying to finish off a couple houses. Two are on the market, and then the other two we're trying to make them co-living spots. I think I said that. And the city is being difficult with permits, so we're just working through that. But flew to Nashville. That was cool on the 4th of July. But uh, Trump came to Des Moines the same day on the 3rd when I landed. So
Hmm.
they had like a bunch of people at the airport looking for him and stuff. It's funny.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Were you flying the night of the 4th? Like, did you see fireworks and stuff?
No, I landed at like 6 o'clock. They
Oh,
had to push back my duty day the next day because I was like the only person on reserve. I think me and another girl, we were like AM reserve, and someone called out for an afternoon flight, so they had me do it.
oh, I see. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, nice.
Mhm.
As it's obvious, my week I'm in California. So we've been at the beach like every day except yesterday. But once we're done here, we're going back to the beach. And so it's
Nice.
been
Which beach?
fun. We've been in Oceanside. Yeah, so it's been super fun. I'm just hanging out with them. I feel like there's nothing real noteworthy besides just beaching it up. So it's been
Cool.
fun. We go back to Arizona tomorrow and I'm on work the next day. So it was
There you go.
short-lived, but it was good. Well, like I said, this case, it makes you sick, but it also has a lot of redeeming points. So from the outside, it's just another house where we're going to start this story. There's gray shutters, a quiet Austrian street, flower boxes in the windows, but below the foundation, beneath the concrete, behind 8 locked doors, one of the most disturbing crimes in modern history is unfolding. For 24 years, no one sees it, no one hears it until a 19-year-old girl collapses and the lie starts to crack. This is the story of Josef Fritzl and the world hidden just beneath his feet. Are you ready?
Jeez, I'm ready.
All right, let's roll. The man standing at the hospital check-in desk looks every bit the part he's played for decades. He has the button collar, gray overcoat, stiff posture, controlled voice. Josef Fritzl, 73, tells the nurse he's here about his granddaughter. She's gravely ill. Her name is Kirsten. The nurse glances towards the gurney being wheeled behind him, and this girl is literally ghost pale, unconscious laying there, and she's only 19 but looks literally 10 years old. A
Oh
tangled
wow.
IV bag swings behind her as they rush into the ER. Fritzl provides minimal information. He says that the girl was left at his doorstep with a note from his longtime missing daughter, Elisabeth, who he insists had joined a cult years ago. She's been doing her own thing, living her own life. But there's a handwritten note in Kirsten's pocket that says, please, please help her. It also mentions some weird things that, like, this really sick 19-year-old, she's taken aspirin, she's had cough medicine, and that she's very scared of people. She's never been to a hospital before. And the nurses
Mm.
are looking at this girl like she is gravely ill and she's taken aspirin. Like she looks horrible. She looks like not that she's just like has the flu. It looks like years of neglect.
Oh wow.
That's a scary sight. And so, of course, the hospital staff is immediately on edge, which I actually love this about hospitals, where it's like their duty to look for anything suspicious as well. And because something's not fitting right, they were like, we're calling the cops.
That's
Kirsten,
good.
yeah, seriously, I'm glad that they are responsible like that. I'm sure they see the worst of stuff. So I'm glad that that's part of their role as well. Kirsten's condition is critical. She has multiple organ system failing, signs of long-term vitamin deficiency, poor dental hygiene, untreated infections. So these are not just like, oh, here's my daughter, go get her a little routine check, right? These are like serious things where they're not even sure at first if Kirsten's even gonna make it through the next day.
Oh wow.
Heart-wrenching,
That's
19 years old.
crazy.
Yeah. And like they say that
You said her mom was in a cult?
yeah, so her mom so the grandfather took the daughter in, and he's saying
Yeah.
like his daughter, the mom of this girl, has been in a cult. She's been gone for over 20 years. And so they say that he didn't even see his daughter drop off the daughter or the Kirsten, 19-year-old daughter, that she was just on his doorstep with a note saying, take her to the hospital. So it's not like he had an encounter. It was just like, here's my daughter, take her in. And it leads to a lot more questions than answers. And of course, police are looking at this like this is a pretty weird story. And so these detectives are dispatched to the hospital and they examine the note that was given and they ask to speak with Elisabeth directly. That's a great request. Makes sense. But
Yeah.
Joseph insists she's in a cult and he's like, she disappeared. I don't know where she's at. I can't help you. This is all I know. And they tell her, like, or tell Joseph, like, hey, if Elizabeth doesn't come forward and tell us what's going on, we're going to get an investigation going. We're getting child services involved. Like, this, we're not letting this one go. Great. That's exactly what they're supposed to do. I love these detectives. And so Joseph Fritzl's mind starts to turn a little bit. There's been 24 years of this long-term secret, neatly stacked, perfectly sealed, and it's about to collapse. His face betrays nothing, but he
He's
knows
a bad guy?
the lie is breaking. He tells
Oh,
them he'll try to find Elizabeth, and for the first time in 2 decades, things begin to shift. And now we have our bad guy.
oh, freak. I feel like I've heard this name before. That's why I was like,
You'll probably recognize the story as we go on, or at least the name, because this obviously happened in Austria, but it is a worldwide case. This broke the news, went across all countries. So you'll tell me if it sounds more familiar. Because this
yeah.
Joseph Fritzl guy, he was born in 1935, and he was like the only child of this wartime home. His father was like a big time alcoholic, not very present. And in fact,
Yeah.
he actually was a soldier and he was killed in action in World War II. So
Oh
his father
wow.
was, yeah, his father was never really in the picture. And that left young Joseph home alone with his mother, who, according to him, I don't know of any other source, but according to him, she was cold, heartless. Allegedly, she beat him and mocked him and told him that he was never wanted. All the horrible things that make a kid feel wildly unloved.
Hmm.
By adulthood, this boy who became a man was obsessed with control. And you hear this happen a lot, right? With neglecting parent or neglectful parents, and it can either lead to children becoming nothing like their parent or lead to just wires getting crossed and messed up in the brain. And unfortunately, Joseph took the latter. He went on, he trained as an electrical engineer. He married a young girl, local girl named Rosemary in 1956. And together they settled into kind of a stable life. They had a normal family. She was only 17 when they got married and he was 21. So they were really young, but also this is in the 50s. And I feel like that wasn't as uncommon back then. But they had seven children, three sons and four daughters, including the youngest daughter who we've been talking about, Elisabeth. She was born in 1966. The home they raised was pretty tight ruled. And I say that
Tries
lightly.
to run it like his mom or something,
What's
potentially.
that?
Like he kind of ran it like his mom might have ran his house, like
Yeah. I don't
based his
know.
mom's trauma or something.
It sounds like I'm not sure to the extent of like beating every single children and stuff like that. However, it sounded like it was his way or the highway. He had commands. He was like not for any emotions, kind of whipped them into shape. And it depends on the source at how physically abusive and how many of the children were abused. But he definitely kept an iron grip on how things were ran in the home. And his wife was like the sweet little quiet, maybe a little passive, perhaps like a little bit willfully blind. I think that you hear that pretty commonly in cases where the wife herself is more of a victim than as a partner in situations like this, where if she tries to say anything, she also gets punished. And so it seems to be kind of a hardcore dynamic between parents and between Joseph and his children. But neighbors describe Joseph as odd but intelligent. He's pretty private as they usually are, and he's kind of quiet, but he does have fits of rage that people have seen. He's respected at work, but he's not like buddy buddy with his coworkers trying to hang out type of thing. And as they always seem to be, he kept a low profile. But inside, his mind is like messed up a little bit. We talked about that wiring is faulty. And he feeds these abnormal desires with a plan. In 1978, he submits construction papers for basement renovations. He tells officials that he's building a nuclear shelter, which I guess it's not like it's like super regular, but also there was like a Cold War anxiety going on, and Austrian homeowners, I guess, were kind of leaning towards making those bunkers. It wasn't necessarily uncommon, or people didn't think you're a psychopath if you are building these bunkers out of protection. So it's approved without question. But he builds it far beyond standard. He goes all in. It takes years. So over the next several years, Joseph quietly constructs an underground bunker, just little at a time, brick by brick. He works mostly alone, and the tunnel is buried behind a false wall in his cellar workshop. That cracks me up. I'm like, that is the most sketchy thing I've ever heard. You have like a or you have like a shelf and it's like hidden behind a fake wall. Like it's like the weird setup. I kind of just,
Yeah, super
just
sketchy.
yeah, just I'm like, why would you need that for just a nuclear safety department, you know?
Yeah, that's because it's not for that.
Right. So behind the wall, a narrow hallway winds through eight doors, three of them electronically locked, and the last one a concrete slab that seals like a vault. Inside
Yes.
is barren. Yeah, a little extreme. The
Yeah.
ventilation, as you can imagine, is weak. The ceilings are low, no
Mm.
windows, no exit, no sound. It is literally just a hole in the ground. His wife, surprisingly, doesn't seem to suspect a thing. She's not allowed in the workshop. She thinks he's doing his own thing. The children live upstairs, unaware that their father is preparing a dungeon right beneath their feet. And like we said, you've already pegged it from the beginning. This is not a shelter. He's building a life sentence. And he already knows who the prisoner will be. Elisabeth, his youngest daughter, quiet, defiant. She actually ran away once when she was 16.
Mm.
According to suspicion, it could be because he was controlling. But what we do know is that at the age of 16, she has been getting sexually abused from her father. And so When she ran away, none of that was told to the cops, and they brought her right back. And it was obvious that she wanted out of this household. But on the spring morning in August of 1984, Elisabeth Fritzl was just 18 years old at this point. Her father asked for her help, just a quick task in the cellar. He says it's nothing unusual, just needs a little bit of another pair of hands. And he leads her down the steps beneath the house into the lower level of his workshop. The air is cool and damp. The concrete hallway is freshly cleaned. Joseph points to a heavy door and asks her to hold it while he drills a bolt. She steps inside, then he presses the cloth to her mouth, and the smell is sharp and chemical. She struggles and eventually fades. When she wakes, the world is gone. The room is barely large enough for her to sit upright. The floor is concrete. The ceiling is low. There are, like we said, no windows, no handles. The door is sealed behind her, thick, reinforced, and she is all alone. She screams, of course, and no one can hear her from down there. And she frankly just disappears. Not a single person, not her teachers, her neighbors, her mom, no one ever thinks to check right below their feet.
Really?
Horrible.
Yeah.
Upstairs, dinner's getting cold as Rosemary is filing a missing person report. She's frantic. According to Rosemary's siblings, as they've been getting interviewed over the years, Rosemary is on top of this. She wants to find her daughter. They're looking at bus stations and other towns, and they're kind of hoping that maybe she's just living on the street a little bit and just wanted to get alone and some privacy. But despite their best efforts, Elizabeth never came home. And Joseph, putting on his good dad hat all of a sudden, comforts his wife and just comforts his kids, acting like everything's normal and fine. He tells police that this was inevitable, that she's ran away before and she's probably just done it again. And he says, you know what? Actually, she's joined a cult. A few days later, a letter arrives, and it's a letter written from Elizabeth herself in her unmistakable handwriting. And it says something along the lines of, don't try and find me. I've joined a religious group. I'm safe. I want nothing to do with the family. Don't worry about me. Don't look for me. And
How
it's
old was she again at this point?
she's 18 when she goes missing.
Okay.
And it's postmarked from a few towns away. So it seems like it's legitimate to those who are looking at it. And Joseph's like, oh, found a letter, walks it on over to the cops. Go, here you go. She says she's just disappeared on her own. And so the case closes. They're like,
Oh, wow.
all right, well, she says she wants to be left alone. We'll leave her alone.
Yeah.
There are no official searches, no questions, just silence. And you have her mom that's like, I don't know if she has her suspicions. I mean, she knows her daughter ran away once, but it sounds like she always kind of kept an eye out. Like the cult thing seemed a little odd, but what could she do? You know? And beneath 8 locked doors, Elizabeth stares into a flickering light bulb, already beginning to understand that no one is coming for her. Joseph comes down often, almost daily. He brings food and water and all this stuff, and he keeps her on a strict schedule. Everything is kind of cataloged, like he knows her exact behavior on days. He takes her clothing and locks it in an upstairs compartment. So I'm not sure how long that lasts, but he's very controlling of everything, all the calories she takes, everything in her life. The one of the weirdest things, just pure manipulation, but one of the weird things he does is he tells her the door is wired with poison gas so that if she tries to escape, the gas will be released and it will instantly kill her.
Oh,
Isn't
wow.
that messed up?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's crazy.
Obviously, she's 18, so she's had a little bit of life experience, but I mean, her dad's engineer, smart guy. I mean, of course, you probably want to believe that's true. Like, you probably won't want to try.
You're probably scared to take the risk too. Like he's already done this. He's crazy enough to do this.
Mhm.
Like, he can definitely probably do something else crazy like that, insane, to have some type of poisonous gas.
Yeah, and I wonder how long would I last? Like listening to Elizabeth's story, I'm like, I don't know if I have the mental strength. Obviously, none of us know what we do in that situation.
Yeah.
And she seems like she literally is a hero. Like she handles things better than anyone could have ever. I'm convinced. But Of course, the gas thing scares her. So she's not trying to bang on the door. She's not trying to get out the door. And Joseph warns her, like, hey, police is not trying to help. Like, no one is looking for you. They've already forgotten you. So, on top of being trapped, she's hearing these horrible stories that her mom's not looking for her, that no one cares she's gone. I can't imagine the mental toll that that's taking. When Elizabeth cries too loudly or resists, he actually cuts off all the power. So the lights go out. She's swallowed by complete and total darkness. Hours pass, sometimes days. She has no idea the time frame anymore. And when she screams, no one can hear her. And when she whispers, no one answers. She begins to lose track of time. It's said that he goes days sometimes without ever bringing food or turning on the light. And so at that point, you have no idea what your life expectancy is. And it just literally makes me like emotional. It's like so sad. And of course, to top it all off, he sexually assaults her repeatedly. There are no days off, and there's no safe place for her. And by November of 1986, so keep in mind, this all happened in 1984 is when she was thrown into this dungeon.
Wow.
So we are 2 years later when in November of 1986, she becomes pregnant for the first time. Yeah, disgusting. It does end in a miscarriage at 10 weeks. And she has to kind of go through this miscarriage delivery alone and pain without aid. And Joseph
Okay.
disposes of the remains and that she never knows where they go.
Wow.
This is going to continue to get very disturbing, just a heads up, because we'll continue with this within 1988. So another 2 years after that, this is when she gets pregnant again and delivers a child who actually survives this environment. And she names her Kirsten. It goes back to the beginning of the story. There's no crib, no diapers. Joseph just gives her an outdated medical manual and a pair of scissors. And she learns how to cut the umbilical cord all by herself, cleans the baby, and wraps her in an old towel. And Kirsten becomes the first child born with no sunlight and with no medical help whatsoever. This just continues to build, in my opinion, the strength of Elisabeth. Like these are the harshest conditions you could ever imagine. And she's over here becoming a young mom, doing it all independently with no medical assistance or any assistance at all. Over the next few years, the cell becomes more crowded, as you can imagine. Another baby is born, then another. And Joseph realizes his carefully constructed chamber is no longer large enough to hold what he's building. Like he keeps having babies and they're crammed in this little bunker. And so this is wild to me. He begins to dig. He's like, oh, we just got to make it bigger. So in 1993, he begins expanding the underground prison, and the tunnels adjacent to the cellar space are slowly started to get cleared out. So dirt is removed in buckets, holes punched in the concrete. The children, who are now toddlers, are doing their part in expanding their own prison. And they're taking soil with their hands, putting it in these buckets. And by 1994, the expansion is complete. So there's a second and third small room now, a crude shower stall, a hot plate, and a small refrigerator at this point, a fold out table, more mattresses, and a dim storage shelf. So the air vents are barely functioning, as you can imagine, and the lights are like barely existent, dim and buzzing. The walls are sweat with moisture, but the growing children, this is all they know. Like these kids have never seen daylight, they've never had a breath of fresh air, and these are in these horrible, horrible conditions. I'm gonna send you a picture, Blake, so you can see what I'm talking about, and it's
Yeah.
gonna be on the screen as well for anybody who's watching. But this is kind of the layout that you can see of the storage area. Those shelves were covering that little passageway. Goes into this very narrow hallway into like a, a horrible excuse of a kitchen and a bathroom, and another narrow hallway to two sleeping areas. So he's trying to expand it because he
Oh
can't
wow.
do anything with these children and have a story for it. And so these are the living conditions under the house of the rest of her family. Doesn't that make you sick?
Hmm.
And I'm throwing a lot at you. So it's just so much and it's so disgusting that I don't know. But Elizabeth, being the incredible woman she is and incredible mom she is, she's doing all she can to teach them how to read, to speak, to honestly stay quiet in the situation. She invents games and makes toys out of trash, and they draw pictures on the cement walls with crayons and different things that Joseph has brought down. And so she's doing all she can to provide, I don't want to even say a normal life, but she's trying to help her kids get some education and a little bit of experience with life. At one point, Joseph also does bring down a TV for them. It's like a little small TV where they can only watch the news. And so they have a little bit of a grasp of the outside world, but it's so heartbreaking because they're seeing like outdoors and they're stuck
Yeah.
in cement. And on the walls, they're drawing trees and an octopus and things that they've never experienced and
Yeah.
flowers. And they're just trying to keep their imaginations alive amongst their cement block walls. This is where it gets even weirder, in my opinion. I'm like, Joseph, you're a freaking messed up man. In 1993, there's a delivery. Lisa is the fourth child of Elisabeth, born in captivity. And Joseph decides he wants Lisa. He wants to raise her upstairs amongst his other kids. He wants his grandkid daughter at the same time.
Sure.
He decides that he's going to have Elisabeth write another handwritten note. And he, in that note, it says something along the lines of, please take care of my child. I cannot care for her. Don't try and find me. So Joseph takes this baby, puts it on his own doorstep in a cardboard box with the letter, and pretends to find this child on his doorstep.
Wow.
Isn't that
That's wow.
so odd?
Yeah.
If you were Mary, oh gosh, Mary Rose or Rosemary, his wife, do you think you'd be questioning at this point? Or are you just excited that you have evidence that your daughter's alive, evidence of a grandkid? I can't even put myself in that situation.
I'd probably be happy um that there's evidence my daughter's alive and there's a grandkid and stuff. Maybe she's thinking about coming back, but
Yeah, it's a good point.
they've been, by the house. She like, I don't know. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it seems as though that's kind of her take on it, Rosemary's, because they go on and like Rosemary's like excited she has a grandbaby and maybe like her daughter's gonna come back and help raise the kid or whatever, but they actually go on to call authorities, let them know that their daughter who's in a cult secretly dropped off her baby. And because of that, no investigation is launched still. They're like, oh, like
Um,
yeah, it's crazy. Like, oh, okay, like she dropped off her kid. There's a handwritten note. And Lisa ends up being adopted by Joseph and Rosemary. And so they go on to raise Elizabeth's daughter as their own, which is, I guess it's kind of is Joseph's, but goes on to raise his daughter upstairs with the rest of the family. So we have
Jeez.
three kids and Elizabeth downstairs in the dungeon. We have the fourth child, Lisa, upstairs with her so-called grandparents getting raised in a normal childhood, going to school, going to the grocery store, doing all the normal things that kids would go out and hang out with their parents for. But
Yeah.
this isn't the first baby that this happens to. There's a second and a third drop off of children.
Oh wow.
In 1994, Monica is born, and the same process happens. She's left on the doorstep. She's left with a note. They contact police. They go on to adopt her. This part is just add salt to the wound. In 1996, Elizabeth gives birth to twin boys, Alexander and Michael. Michael, upon delivery, suffers severe breathing problems from birth. I mean, he's in no hospital. Elizabeth is doing all she can. She delivered six other babies at this point. And Elizabeth begs Joseph for medical help, and he refuses. She's like,
Well,
yeah, he's like, if he doesn't make it to a hospital, he's not going to make it through the night. And Joseph will not put his lie up for the test. And because of that, Michael does pass away approximately 66 hours after he was born. Joseph removes the body from the cellar, wraps it in a cloth, and cremates it in the house first.
Jeez. Whoa, that's
And
wild.
I'm telling you, this is a dark one. This one's a heartbreaker. This
Yeah.
act is later used as evidence of murder of neglect by neglect. So Joseph then is like, okay, the Alexander, the other twin, makes it through delivery, is a healthy baby, and this is the third and final baby that he decides to pull off the same stunt. The baby at the doorstep, the letter, the adoption process. At some point, I'm like, is no one getting curious why
Yeah.
his daughter is dropping off so many babies at his doorstep?
Anyone sees her like that many times, or like someone in town recognize her, or
Exactly.
any records or anything like that.
Obviously, we're in the 90s, so records are harder than it
Right.
would be today. But you would think that something had to have come up. So on the outside, he's pretending to be this kind-hearted grandfather, like he's raising the children of his missing daughter, and she
Mhm.
abandons these babies and all this stuff.
And you can't bring the other ones up because they probably are old enough to understand.
Right. That would kind of just put a wrench in his plans. Like
Yeah.
everything he's ever done would come to light at that point.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth is forced to surrender her babies without warning. Like the three that got taken upstairs, she didn't even get the choice. She didn't make the letters, I will say, but she's also like, get,
Forced to.
yeah, getting abused. Like she didn't really have a choice, even though people are like,
Mhm.
why does she do that? She doesn't have a choice. She's in the worst situation ever. And so her, Kirsten, Stefan, and later Felix all remain underground. Elizabeth continues to do what she can to raise them in silence, but I mean, you can only have so many resources when you're underground.
Mhm. Yeah.
So Kirsten had never seen the sun, and she's now 19.
Oh
Let that
wow.
soak in.
That's
19 years
wild.
old, born under the dungeon. She's 19 now, born underground, raised beneath concrete and fluorescent bulbs. Her skin is pale, her body weak, and now, without warning, it begins to shut down. Hence, back to the beginning of the story, she's severely malnourished. She has no vitamin D, all vitamin deficient, and she
Mhm.
collapsed on the floor of the cellar. She's having seizures and rapid pulse. She's vomiting. Her eyelids are twitching uncontrollably. And of course, her mother is right there panicking. She has no control. She has no medical anything, no medical experience, first of all, and no real medicine or anything that could do anything to help her daughter.
Yeah.
She's delivered these babies in silence, survived years in isolation, but now she's watching her firstborn fade, and she knows this is beyond anything she can control. And so she begs Joseph to please help her. Of course, Joseph, being selfish, hesitates. He spent nearly a quarter century building this lie. They have been underground for 24 years at this
Wow.
point.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
And so he's had all these secrets piled up on each other. But now one of the children, like his children technically, is dying. And if she dies down there, he's thinking there's not a way to hide that, which,
Mhm.
oh, it makes me so mad at him. So selfish. So on April 19th, 2008, he actually does carry Kirsten out of the dungeon for the first time. She's upstairs, she's through the locked doors and into the sunlight for the first time in her entire life at 19 years old.
Wow.
He drives her to the hospital and she was left and says she was left on my doorstep like everybody else supposedly.
Mhm.
And he says that she was just another child abandoned by his missing daughter. He says Elizabeth is part of a religious cult, refuses to come forward. But like we said in the beginning, doctors are skeptical because Kirsten
Yeah.
is in multiple organ failure. Like she's
Mhm.
neglected. And Joseph, he realizes he's in a corner. And
Yeah.
the over a week is how long Kirsten's in the hospital with this pressure just building up on him. So on April 26th, Joseph does the most unthinkable, unexpected event. he finally opens that last door and tells
Wow.
Elizabeth she must come upstairs, that she has to pretend the cult story is true. She follows him into the sun, blinking, trembling, wrapped in sunglasses and all things. Like she's never seen the sun. She
Yeah.
hasn't, I guess, in the last 24 years.
Yeah.
Her other son, Stefan, 18, and the youngest, Felix, is 5. They come with her, and the three of them, they touch grass for the first time. Their eyes squint in the open sky. They see the birds and everything they've seen on their little news channel. They're finally
Wow.
seeing for the first time.
That's crazy.
You know, at the hospital, doctors and police watch in stunned silence as three people that they thought were lost, or actually never even knew about the two other kids, now
Hmm.
step into view. Joseph tries one last lie. He claims Elizabeth had just returned voluntarily. They finally found her after 24 years, and his daughter's back, and they're so excited, whatever. He tells Elizabeth, obviously threatening her, you better stick to the story. But once she's alone and safe and promised she'll never have to see him again, she tells them everything.
Wow.
I she is now in her 40s at this point in time.
Holy cow.
The rags, she talks about the prisons, she talks about the beatings, she talks about the forced births, she talks about everything, the cremation of her baby Michael, the forged notes, the children taken from her arms, the darkness, everything. Her statement takes hours, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Josef Fritzl is arrested that same night, and just like that, the secret is out. News spreads fast. Austrian police descend on the property. They bring engineers, child psychologists, experts. The story sounds so impossible, like everyone has to be there. Like we need to know
Yeah.
what's going on. A woman kept in a cellar for 24 years, 7 children, 3 raised above ground, and the rest raised underground. A home doubled as a dungeon. It was so much to comprehend. Inside the house, police find the concealed entrance to the basement. And in fact, they didn't even find it the first time they looked. They had to have Joseph tell them where the opening was. Like that's
Oh,
how
wow.
difficult it was to get to.
Yeah.
Neighbors are horrified, as you can imagine, knowing like we just saw Joseph the other day and everything seemed normal. He's quiet and polite. He's kind of odd, but nothing dangerous. Another recalls seeing him walk his dog. And Rosemary, like Joseph's wife, is in shock, claiming that she never knew. I can't imagine that heartbreak knowing your daughter was downstairs and you weren't
Yeah.
help. Uh,
That's crazy.
that would break any mother's heart, I can imagine. One neighbor says he must have had a second life because not a single person saw it coming. Meanwhile, Joseph sits in a holding cell. He doesn't cry, he doesn't panic. When asked why he did it, he says, I could have killed him, but I didn't. Keeps this like identity of I'm not a bad guy. Like I could have done so many worse things. And he describes himself as strict but not brutal. He says he brought Elizabeth flowers on her birthday, that they watched TV together, that he gave children books and Christmas presents. He seemed confused as like why people didn't thank him for not harming them more, claiming he is no monster and that people can do monstrous acts and not be a monster. I'm like, what a narcissist.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you abused your daughter and had her in prison for her whole life. Like,
Yeah. He's a monster.
he's a
Definition.
monster. Yeah, that's like right there in the dictionary if I had to find it.
Yeah.
So, of course, psychiatrists are like, okay, what's really going on with this guy? And they perform an evaluation immediately. The diagnosis is grim, of course. It's a severe mix of personality disorders with narcissism, antisocial, and sexual sadistic traits. Experts warn he shows no remorse, he only wants control, and he is not safe for going back into the world, as you can imagine. In fact, it kind of pulls up old crime history records of him, of course. And in 1967, 2 decades before Elizabeth went missing, Joseph broke into the Lynn's home of a 24-year-old nurse while her husband was away and sexually assaulted her while holding a knife to her throat, threatening to kill her if she screamed, and in
Oh,
fact is accused of potentially a second rape that same year. So there's an obvious sadistic pattern here. And he goes
yeah.
on to say that he kind of had this, I don't remember the exact quote, but basically it was like his desires were like a volcanic ready to bubble over. And so he
Wow.
had to do what he had to do. And that is not the case, sir. You do not have to do this to your youngest daughter.
Mhm.
Investigators begin cataloging the evidence, and there's thousands of case files, hundreds of interviews, a complete rebuild of the cellar, which I sent you a picture. And
Yeah.
they dig into property records, child welfare case notes, the adoption filings, all of which Joseph manipulated without even raising alarm. Austria is rocked. And so the prime minister made a statement saying that we will not allow our country to be held hostage by one man, and that Austria is not the perpetrator. This is an unfathomable criminal case, but also an isolated case. And it became immediately national news. And Austria is doing all they can to not be associated with this horrible man that is one of their citizens. And of course, this all started back when there was world wars and things. So it immediately became like, don't make the country look bad. And well, of course, like Joseph is his own individual. And so the prime minister was involved very heavily right away. All through it all, Elizabeth has stayed hidden. She's just working on healing. She's shielding her children, trying to teach them that the world is bigger than that little concrete room that they grew up in. And so this is when the trial began in March of 2009. So lots of time has passed from when she originally got captive. Nearly a year after the cellar was discovered, Josef Fritzl steps into court. He's stooped, gray, hiding behind a blue folder to avoid cameras. That's like always what they do, I swear. And he was actually sealed behind a bulletproof glass enclosure. He pleads not guilty to the most serious charge, which the whole thing is serious to me, but the murder by neglect for the death of the infant, Michael. He also denies enslavement, though he admits to the rape, incest, and false imprisonment. So he's trying to like dodge like the heavy hitters, but he does say that he was sexually abusing, and that's the only thing that he's doing wrong. He's confused. But the
Mhm.
tide turns quickly. On day two of the trial, prosecutors play Elizabeth's videotape testimony, which is hours of recorded evidence detailing every little detail. And Elizabeth is actually in the building that day. She sits in the gallery,
Wow.
disguised, of course, disguised in a wig and sunglasses. Her identity shielded even from the press, and Joseph never looks over at her. They do not make eye contact. In fact, he is removed from the courtroom while her video plays, honoring the promise made to her that you'll never have to face him again. It is rumored that he does find out that she was in the court that day because the next morning, Joseph changes his plea. He says, I declare myself guilty on all charges. There's no apology, no explanation, just the flat truth. And people think he kind of saw the sheer boldness that she was in the courtroom, and maybe that pushed him to actually, it triggered something to confess to
Mhm.
all his crimes.
Yeah. Wow.
On March 19th, 2009, the jury finds him guilty of all charges, including murder by neglect, rape, incest, enslavement, false imprisonment. He is sentenced to life in secure psychiatric facility, and he will never be released. So since then, his house boarded up. Neighbors refuse to go by it, as you can imagine. The dungeon is
Mhm.
declared a crime scene, is later a national trauma site at this point. So a judge rules that it must be demolished. And so in 2013, the cellar is filled with concrete. And by 2016, the entire house is completely torn down. And I believe now a small apartment is actually on where it used to be standing.
Oh,
So,
wow.
but as for Elizabeth and her children, Elizabeth and her six surviving children are now given new identities and live in a secure therapeutic facility before relocating to a private home where they can
Mhm.
go and kind of restart their roots. Kirsten, who we
Wow.
started off with, the 19-year-old who nearly died, recovers slowly. Stefan learns to walk confidently for the first time, being able to stand to full height.
Yeah.
Felix, the youngest in the dark, sees his first sunrise and enjoys all the things that he saw, the animals he saw on his little news channel. The adjustment is hard, as you can imagine, because all these children are going to suffer with complex PTSD and phobias and developmental delays, but they do begin to heal. Elizabeth, like I said, is now in her 40s and is said to love walking in the woods. She avoids cameras, she grants no interviews, but survivor advocates describe her as a fiercely protective mother and a woman of extraordinary resilience. And I can't think of a better way to frame Elizabeth. That's exactly
Yeah.
what she sounds like. Just resilient, like an incredible mom. She's done everything for those children. And I have so much respect for her for surviving through these horrible times.
Yeah.
So, a prison was buried, a courtroom gave justice, a house was destroyed, but survival, real survival, lives not in verdicts or headlines. It lives in Kirsten's heartbeat that she survived, in Stefan's steps, in Felix's first drawings under the sun, and in a mother who refused to let darkness win. And that is the story of Elisabeth and Josef Fritzl.
Wow. That is sad.
I know
Yeah.
this
It
one was a
is
little
a
strong.
lot.
I know we don't really like too abusive of stories. It's just so hard to talk about. And I know I kind of ran through this. There's so much to it, but I wanted you to get the full picture.
Wow. Wow.
So they're
I'm sad.
heroes. Elizabeth is literally my hero.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I could have kept going. Like, she is just the prime example of living for more. So,
Definitely.
anyway, so that's our story. Crazy. But do you have any true crime news or not so fun facts?
Yeah, let's do it. Just a couple today. Um, First one we're gonna go off of is kind of weird. A Florida man was arrested after allegedly threatening a McDonald's because he didn't get his McNuggets.
I think
Uh,
we'll always have Florida true crime news.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So,
wild.
an 18-year-old allegedly threatened to shoot up a McDonald's restaurant after they made a mistake in his order. According to a July 2nd press conference with Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd, 18-year-old Dayton went to the fast food restaurant and didn't get the chicken McNuggets he supposedly ordered. Judge said Schaefer then acted like a McNut.
Acted like a
The
McNug.
McNut.
That's funny.
Yeah, I saw a TikTok about this one. The sheriff was kind of funny, but yeah. So he called the McDonald's multiple times, threatening to shoot it up, and deputies responded to Dayton's home, where the suspect admitted to calling the restaurant because they didn't get his order right. Schaefer was booked into the Polk County Jail and faces charges of false report concerning the use of a firearm and misuse of two-way communication device. So, that guy is crazy.
I just can't imagine being that passionate about something so dumb. Just getting so riled up about the silliest things.
Yeah, seriously. Another one, a man is sentenced for fatally stabbing a 22-year-old woman in a murder for hire plot orchestrated by his victim's ex.
Gee.
So, a 44-year-old man will spend the rest of his life behind bars for fatally stabbing a 22-year-old woman nearly a decade ago in a murder for hire plot orchestrated by the victim's ex-boyfriend. And this happened in Pennington County State. I don't know where that is. Normally it says right on the top where it is, but that one's crazy. It's kind of weird to hear a murder for hire, and you don't hear that too much.
Yeah, that's a
Unless-
good point.
And then the last one, which is kind of sad, actually really sad, but vegan neuropathic parents are convicted of putting newborn in saunas and ice baths and starving it.
Starving?
Yeah, in California, Orange County, California, a mother and father who consider themselves naturopaths were recently convicted of exposing their newborn son to saunas and ice baths, as well as starving him and causing severe brain damage that left him a quadriplegic and unable to walk, talk, or see. That's super sad.
That is heartbreaking. I hate that
Yeah.
so much.
And they're scheduled to be sentenced July 25th and face a maximum of 12 years in prison.
You're gonna have to update us when there's a ruling.
Yeah, well, there's a lot more information on it. All of these are on the truecrimenews.com. There's a lot more that happen every day. So,
Yeah, save that one so we can go back and know what happened though. I want to know. I'm curious.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
that poor baby.
Yeah.
It's like today's story was hard enough. Like the children involved, I don't do well with kids being involved in such horrible, horrible acts.
Yeah. I agree.
Thanks for the update with the news around the world and the new
Yeah.
true crime world.
Mm-hmm.
So, although we're not in the same state, and it's always more difficult when we have to Zoom, and the quality is probably worse, we're so grateful for everyone that tuned in this week, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Siblings in Crime.
Thank you.